Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, all.
Hello there.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. Let me check in with staff, and I asked our city manager, Mr. Obid, are we ready to go on staff's end?
Thank you, Mayor. We are ready to go.
Well, with that, I think we should get started. I'm going to begin by calling to order this meeting and welcome everybody to this joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency for Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. And with that, we're going to jump right to item number 2, which is roll call. And I'll ask our city clerk if we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Sparks.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Here.
Mayor Landman.
And here. Thank you. Okay, and before we move away from this, I'm going to take a second and ask City Manager Obid if he would take a moment to introduce the members of staff here tonight.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So, Damien Obid, the City Manager. We also with us tonight have John Bacher, our City Attorney, as well as Craig Scott, our City Engineer, Director of Public Works, Michael Parrish, our Chief of Police, and of course, Kevin Patterson, our Deputy City Clerk.
Well, thank you for that. This takes us to our Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd like to ask everybody who would like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
Under God.
indivisible,
With
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. All right, that takes us then to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes and a notice of waiving a reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda. This is an action item. These are the minutes of our regular meeting of July 26, 2022. And I'll ask first if there's any corrections or additions to the minutes from any of my colleagues on the council. I'm not seeing any hands go up virtually or visually. I will mention that I did notice one very small typo, but it might be worth correcting. For item 10A, under public comment, we do list a Mr. Jim Duffy as being from Cotati. And I believe I'm very sure Mr. Duffy is from Roanoke Park, actually. So it would be valuable to correct that, I think. All right, so with that, if there's no corrections beyond that, next we'll go to public comments. This is an action item, and see if we have anybody here tonight that wishes to comment on this. I am not seeing any attendees tonight so far, Kevin. Do you see anything that I don't?
That is correct, Mayor Landman. Currently, there are no attendees.
All right, well, it's always good to ask. So with that, then I'll bring it back if there's no further discussion or changes for a motion in a second, if I can get one.
Move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion from the Vice Mayor. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Ford for a second. Could we have a roll call vote?
That was Councilmember Moore.
Really? Well, I'm looking at your face and Councilmember Moore is actually off, so I thought it was you. So thank you for truth and honesty on that one. Let me correct that to Councilmember Moore. Apologies, John. And if we could now jump.
Councilmember Ford,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey,
Yes.
Mayor Landman.
Yes. All right, so that concludes item 4 and takes us now to announcements. And I'll ask you to bear with me. I do have a few things that I need to read. And I'll begin with our meeting orientation for new attendees and viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council will consider the item and citizens are afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizen business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. The City Council may or may not choose to respond to comments as the government code allows. However, if the City Council declines to respond, it should not be perceived as giving credence to or agreeing with any statements that the City Council or its members may believe are incorrect, misinformed, or purposefully biased. Next, I'm happy to share that Measure S supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. And you can see details about that on the web at cotaticity.org. Next, citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up with Nixon. And you can do that by downloading the Everbridge app from the iOS or the Android App Store, or by simply texting your zip code, 94931, to 888777. And finally, like always, we do love hearing from you, so feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or through email at info@cotaticity.org. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, you can still contact us. And you can contact us at 707-792-4611. And of course, if you do have an emergency at any time, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and our social media channels that are available on Facebook, Instagram, Nixle, and Nextdoor. And with that, we move now to item 6, which is presentations. And I believe we have a presentation tonight and proposed changes to the Sonoma County Tourism Business Improvement Assessment. So I'll ask if we have our presenter here, if we can get started, please.
Good evening, Mayor Landman and Cotati City Council. I am Kelly Bass-Seibel, the Vice President of Community Engagement with Sonoma County Tourism. And with me tonight, I have Claudia Vecchio, our President and CEO, and K.O. Hornbostel, our he's board member, also general manager at Safari West, but he's the chair of our Legal and Finance Committee. And with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to K.O.
Good evening, council members. You can go to the next slide. I know we only have 15 minutes, so I'm going to do this as fast as I possibly can. Little history, 2004, all the hoteliers in the county came together, said we wanted to assess a business improvement area on ourselves and pass that on to the customer to form a destination management company. In the slide in front of you, you can see that in 2018, we actually switched to become a destination stewardship organization. We wanted to make sure we were taking care of the county. This was, at the time, unprecedented. We are seeing more destination marketing organizations across the country start to follow our lead. Claudia was just recently interviewed for the landmark thing that we did. And it's really about making sure that we're getting the right people to come to Sonoma County. You can go to the next slide, please. Again, 2018, we did this. The old adage was we wanted more heads and beds and we just cared about numbers. Now we care about numbers, but we also care about who's coming to the county and what they're going to do while they're here. Are they going to take care of our environment? You know, this is such a diverse community in this county, from the redwood forest to the rivers, to the wineries, to the breweries. We want people that are going to come here and respect what we have. And it's a very unique market, and it is an expanding market incredibly. I have been on the board since the inception of this organization in 2005. And as Kelly said, I'm currently the finance and legal chair, so I get to hang out with you this evening. So that's why I'm here. So I'll turn it over, try to make it fast, and we'll leave questions for the end.
Next slide, please.
So Sonoma County Tourism, we talk about the county in its entirety, but obviously there are neighborhood cities and towns that make our community so unique. So I'm just going to take a moment, if we can go to the next slide. I just want to go over specifically how we talk about Cotati. So we are not a membership organization. Claudia will get into how we're funded in just a minute through our lodging properties, but Cotati does have representation on our website. There's 38 businesses. We talk about businesses, we call them partners. Those are visitor-facing businesses. So it could be your restaurants, wineries, breweries, tour attractions, retail. We have 38 Cotati businesses listed on our website. We also have a very robust social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We just started our TikTok channel about a month ago. To date, we've had Cotati partners included in more than 5 posts and blogs. And then SonomaCounty.com, Cotati is listed in the title of 1 article, 2 events, 3 landing pages, and 1 what's new entry. And this doesn't include, there's hundreds of pages on our website. There's lots of places where Cotati is included, but this is where Cotati is really included as in a headline. And then also, you've got events. So the Accordion Festival is always listed as an event that attracts visitors from out of the area. And in addition to that, we have a public relations team. And that public relations team does pitches to journalists all over the country. And we did have a Cotati partner that was mentioned this last year in an article on The Travel, which is a travel website blog. And this is why Sonoma County is best visited in the fall. It says there it has a qualitative media score of 8. What does that mean? That really looks at not just how many people saw it, but how many people saw it that actually fit the profile of who we're trying to reach. And that is out of 10. So it's a very high score. So that means that it really got to the type of visitor that we're trying to get to. And that is incredibly important because it's more than just the numbers. It's really ensuring that we're inviting people here that are going to care for this place the same way a local would. Obviously, what the benefits look like for Cotati right now are a little bit different than they look like for our other cities because you don't currently have a lodging property. And so I know it seems a little odd that we're here, but Cotati is one of our participating BIA municipalities. You bought in at the beginning. And so as we go through the changes, we'd like to bring you along with us, particularly that we know that you have a hotel that is still in discussion. So happy to answer any questions about this, but with given time, I'll turn it over to Claudia and we can get to questions at the end.
Thank you.
Next slide,
please. So we are looking at a responsible tourism assessment. And what that really means is, as Kale was talking about, is our opportunity to find those travelers who really want to protect and preserve Sonoma County. And to do that, that specific and really targeted outreach takes a lot of money, and it takes more money than we have historically had with a more broad-based outreach. Next slide, please. So Kelly talked a little bit about our funding. We are funded in two ways. Both of these have to do with performance at lodging properties. But those people who stay in lodging properties contribute to the sales tax, and in many cases are eventual property taxpayers, because everything begins with a visit, and a lot of people come here and they love it and they buy a house. So, but the business improvement area is a self-assessment, as Kay was talking about. The lodging properties got together and they determined that yes, they would collect these additional dollars assessed at the properties on the guests and put those directly into marketing funds that bring people into the community. The majority currently of SCT's funding comes from this 2% assessment on applicable lodging rooms. And I'm just going to go through this quickly. I won't read all these. You will have this presentation. So as Kelly said, any questions, but I'm just going to go through these quickly. The business improvement area does include all Sonoma County cities and unincorporated areas, except for Hillsburg and Sonoma, who during the inception of all of this determined that they were not going to participate. But the remainder of the county are very much active participants in this BIA and the funding that it brings. So as it says there, the funds must benefit the payers. That's in the language of this legislation, which is why all those dollars need to go back into marketing and back into programming that drive people in the business, in the front doors of those businesses. Currently, the county, through the County of Sonoma, has an agreement with Airbnb, but it does not include collection for the BIA. And I'll show you how that all works into all of this in a second. Next slide, please. The second way we are funded is through transient occupancy tax. And again, this is all assessed on a visitor who stays in a lodging property. And I would bet if any of you go anywhere else, you look at your receipt at the end of your lodging stay and you'll see a number of different types of taxes, and this will be one of them. Sonoma County Tourism receives 1.25% of the first 9% of TOT collected only within the unincorporated areas of the county. So if it comes to the point where Cotati does get TOT, there is a property in TOT in the city of Cotati, that TOT will go directly back to the city. It won't go to Sonoma County Tourism. So then the TOT becomes part of general funds in that place that it's collected. So those funds support a wealth of different types of programming for the arts, recreation, housing, public safety, education. I mean, all of those things that general funds support. So you can see the difference between the two. The BIA comes in with this self-assessment from hoteliers, but it has to go back into benefiting those payors. The transient occupancy tax, again, comes in through people staying in lodging tax, but that becomes part of this countywide general fund and supports a lot of industries. Next slide, please. So Sonoma County Tourism is working to build a budget that will help elevate the economy of the entirety of Sonoma County through doing a number of key things. The first is to get leisure or individual travelers from our direct flying markets to stay longer and spend more. So if they're coming in from Dallas or Phoenix or Los Angeles or now Palm Springs, those folks will generally come in and spend more money because they're here longer. It's a greater investment that they have in their vacation. We also want to look at elevating group business. This is a highly coveted group of visitors because they come in for meetings, they spend money while they're here, and we in Sonoma County often benefit from what we call bleisure, and that is people who come in for business and they stay for leisure. So their family comes in, or they stay the weekend, or they kind of spread that stay out longer and enjoy both of those two attributes. We're also restarting international travel, and as you can imagine, marketing in the international world is an incredibly expensive undertaking, and that restart is happening slowly but surely. And then, as we've been talking about, further developing this destination stewardship or responsible travel campaigns. These are really important, and it is a chance for us to get that quality traveler into the destination who really will protect and preserve it. We're doing a number of programs right now that really work in that space, but the outreach to those travelers and our marketing agencies provided us with a plan to find those, but it is more expensive. So what we're proposing and what we would like to do as an organization is two things. First is to eliminate the $350,000 annual revenue benchmark that is currently in place for the BIA. So when those properties came out originally, it was determined that any property that makes less than that would not need to participate. But now with the rise of vacation rentals, with the lots of bed and breakfasts and other smaller properties, it's time for them for us to level the playing field across all of those entities. And so to eliminate that $350,000 benchmark will be important, and then raise the allocation for participating property from 2 to 3%. Next slide, please. What will that mean to the Sonoma County tourism budget? So our current budget is estimated for this year, the start of July 1st, is about $9.2 million. BIA makes up about $6 million, a little over $6 million, and TOT a little over $3 million. That might seem like it's a pretty hefty budget, but if you look at the similar destinations, and quite honestly, most of those are much smaller destinations than we are, you can see we're being outspent by all of those folks. So if we looked at that BIA funding for SCT, if we eliminate the $350,000 annual benchmark, we're looking at additional $2 million about, and then raising collections from 2 to 3%, an additional $3 million. That would take us up right around $14 million, which is now a competitive budget, especially against those other destinations. Next slide, please. There's a lot of words on these next few slides, so I'm not going to go through them all. But really, when we look at what we're trying to accomplish in an environment that continues to be impacted by COVID, is now impacted by a pending recession, and is really looking at rising gas prices and all other types of headwinds, it's still it's a difficult environment to gain any real momentum. We certainly during the past 5 years have experienced a number of natural disasters and various crises, and we're really hoping that now we can gain the momentum, and these new funding dollars will help us to do that. The other critical part is that we are in the midst of developing a destination resiliency and stewardship plan. This will give us kind of a 20-year look at what we want this destination to become. That plan will come with action items once it's created at the end of this year. And those action items will require some funding. And so we want to be sure we have that generated funding to help us accomplish those things that the entire community is determined we want to accomplish in 20 years. You can see the rest of this. It's always more expensive to find new visitors than to remind loyal fans about us, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're looking for new, really high quality, respectful visitors. Next slide, please. This is just, I'm not going to go through this at all, but when you look at the expense of marketing in our key markets, these flight markets, LA, Seattle, Portland, San Diego, as you can imagine, these are super expensive markets. And that really does, I mean, there's the tail of the tape right there. It's an expensive undertaking if we want to be successful. Next slide, please. So we have to, as we look at the BIA, if we recall, everything has to benefit the payers. So we needed to do a kind of a preliminary marketing plan around how we are going to benefit those who will now be part of this program. So those who currently are in that less than $350,000 revenue, again, I'm not going to read all these words, but special recognition on SonomaCounty.com for vacation rentals and bed and breakfast establishments. Curate at least one media press trip that focuses on small lodging businesses. We focus on small businesses all the time, but this one will focus on lodging businesses. Develop a vacation rental committee, really that focuses on the issues and opportunities inherent to this industry. Continue to ensure this segment has a voice on the SCT board of directors. There's a fairly complicated matrix of how that board is comprised, but make sure that this group has continued to have a voice. SHE will create as part of its annual report an accounting and usage of these funds directly as it has benefited these groups. And then to ensure any content produced and main copy of the website is available in English, German, French, and Spanish. And why is that important to this? Because international travelers love this type of lodging facility. Next slide, please. And then how will it benefit those properties already paying? As we talked a lot about that, those flight markets, those are the ones that they will stay longer and spend more. So the more money we can put into those really expensive markets will be super important. Find more travel and trade shows where we can promote the business travel piece of this, create additional client events at key markets, again, those key flight markets. And then we can bring the big broadcast TV programs, influencers and content developers that all are coming at a pretty hefty cost to showcase Sonoma County to responsible travelers. Next slide, please. A couple other things: identify additional sales and marketing opportunities in global markets and develop a lot of content. We talk a lot about content. You've heard the old adage, content is king. So that's something we want to do at an increasing amount. Next slide, please. How will it benefit Cotati specifically? So I talk about visitors that stay longer, spend more money. They'll spend more money in lodging properties, but also spend more money in the communities. So it's important for us to make sure that we elevate understanding and sort of that rich content so visitors come and they know what they can do in Cotati. Right now, Cotati has a page on our website, but we really want to develop the cities, towns, and neighborhood program that creates ongoing, really rich content, talks to locals, really what's special about Cotati. That's nobody can tell that like the locals. So get those interviews and really find all of those unique gems of information that we can put out there for Cotati and update that page all the time. And then something else that our cities are appreciative of is data. So we want to ensure we have better data than we have now. We have an annual economic impact survey, but we can do more. We can do more frequent data. There are companies out there that can track us by our phones, and they know exactly where we are in destinations. So we know if people are coming to Cotati, we can share that information back to you. So it really is a chance for us to be more sophisticated as it relates to data. Next slide. I think I'm going to turn it over to Kelly now, and she's going to talk through the timeline. And the timeline is shifting somewhat, but she's going to talk through kind of our ideal timeline as we're rolling this out.
Thank you, Claudia. So I just want to thank City Manager Obid. This has been, we've been meeting with our participating municipalities and coming, in front of councils and city council subcommittees, and just appreciate his ability to get us in front of you tonight. The way this process works is the county ordinance, and the cities have a resolution of consent to participate in that ordinance. With an ordinance change, there's 2 readings of the ordinance, and there's a waiting period in between where there has to be a public a mailing to all of the lodging properties, and then also a public meeting. So we're currently slated on the Board of Supervisors agenda on October 4th and on December 13th. That actually was just solidified last week. But the Board of Supervisors has asked that we meet with all of the municipalities prior to the October 4th date because they didn't want to move forward with this if the municipalities weren't interested in participating. The way the ordinance works, there's actually, while it is a county ordinance, the payors of the ordinance have an opportunity to contest that ordinance moving forward, and it's weighted based off of revenues. We have been meeting with our lodging properties and feel that we do have support from the lodging community to move this forward. Our board of directors is made up of lodging properties, and they've been asking for this for a couple of years. So we are in front of you tonight to get any of your questions answered. And I believe if we are hearing support from you, we would come back in August, later this month, to move this forward, to move the resolution of consent forward.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly, Kev, and Claudia. A lot to pack in 15 minutes, and I think you covered it very well. Let me check in with my city manager and our city attorney. I'm somewhat uncertain here. This is listed as a non-action item, only a presentation on our agenda tonight. And now I understand in the presentation that we have a very tight timeline and we would need to come back with a resolution of support by the end of the month. And yet I'm understanding we're really not supposed to be taking positions on this tonight. I think we can give feedback. Mr. Obid, can you illuminate that, or Mr. Bacher a little more than that, so we can perhaps help these folks up as much as we can?
Yeah, I think, well, at least my intent was just to get feedback from the council tonight, not direction, but feedback. And then if that feedback is positive, then we can bring it back at a separate meeting where we can have a decision discussion.
Great. Well, I think that should be workable. That should get the job done. So let me slide this over here so I can see some other faces other than mine. I see a hand from Councilmember Ford and from Councilmember Sparks. Let's start in that order, please.
All right, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. You answered my, just at the end, Ms. Siebel answered my first question, which was about whether lodging properties are on board and whether you've done surveys or have evidence of that. Because as I understand it, the whatever it's called, the IA came into existence at the sort of by lodging properties coming together. So if you have any more to say on that, I'm interested in it. The other is just a comment. The attracting the right people here language is quite problematic for me. That's very racially charged language to some people, and it's I would take great caution in using that kind of language. In fact, I would like to see the body take a stance to reach out and show evidence of an effort to reach out to diverse cultural communities and to broaden the base of people who are visiting Sonoma County. The right people language really comes across as we want rich people of a particular cultural group, and that's problematic. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Ford. Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. Thank you for coming to our meeting. I had the same reaction that Councilmember Ford did, and that was actually what I raised my hand to address. But I had a question for you. I wondered if you could explain more, what are the characteristics that you're targeting for a quote unquote responsible traveler? You said that your marketing agencies have a plan to deliver advertising straight to the right type of person. I would just like to know, what are the what's the information that your marketing agency is using to determine who that is and who you're targeting that to?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. We certainly are very cognizant of the language that we use, and it's a responsible traveler, so it's somebody who protects and preserves this area. So when we look at the type of people that are going to be targeted through our marketing campaign, it is those who are that are connected to outdoor recreation, have a propensity toward the kind of media outlets and the kind of social media channels that talk about being very responsible about outdoors and recreating responsibly outdoors. You know, there are a lot of publications, outdoor magazines. And other kinds of channels that you can see the types of channels that we're reaching out to. We're doing a number of videos right now that are targeted to responsible travelers. So they talk about, I mean, we went out with, I don't know if you know Suki Waters. She's a member of the indigenous peoples. And she has this extraordinary trip that she takes kayakers out around Jenner, and they look at harbor seals, and they look at the total chain of life and the food chains and these kinds of things that are so fragile. And for visitors to come and understand the fragility of our outdoor natural resources is incredibly important. So in that way, they won't leave trash, they won't leave floats on rivers, and they won't, you know, they'll just be more protective of this place. We often say a place worth visiting is a place worth protecting. And it's that kind of language that we are putting out there that is, you know, it really is that careful and being a careful consumer of the destination.
Thank you. Just a follow-up comment. There's been a nationally, this is not a local problem, and nationally there's historically non-white populations have been underserved by parks, outdoor recreation, and you might find a demographic, if we're just targeting people who are subscribed to outdoor recreation type of publications, I'm concerned that there might be a demographic situation where we're really targeting white people with some of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
do you have data?
I'll get to that. That's not the case.
What's that?
That's not the
Okay.
case. We really are very conscious of the way we're marketing Sonoma County, and that whole piece. I can promise you, we are being very inclusive in the way we market Sonoma County.
Are the marketers that you're contracting with able to provide data showing that it is reaching a diverse audience?
The data, I could see what they have in terms of the diversity of the channels they're working with, if they have that kind of data. We have data in regard to visitors, and we get that on an annual basis, so we know we can definitely see the demographics of the visitors who come to Sonoma County, and we'll know as we continue to move down this road, or we continue to show a much more diverse traveler in all of our marketing materials, if that's making a difference. But we do have that information in terms of travelers, and I can see if they can get information in terms of the channels. There's so much sophisticated technology right now and data, channels, that it could be that they can, but I'll ask that question.
Thank you very much. I think that would be really helpful to me, as I really appreciated the fact that you're going to be sharing data with the cities, and I would really love to see that. And thank you.
Yeah. And just a follow up to that, we have, some of our responsible travel messaging, we have started, putting out there in multiple languages. So, there was regional radio spots over the major holiday weekends this summer around responsible travel. It was put out in both English and Spanish. It was put out intentionally to our drive market because we know that oftentimes the drive market is people are coming to recreate on the beaches, in the rivers, and it's not necessarily, it's a very diverse audience. So we wanted to make sure that we were spreading that responsible travel message beyond an English speaking audience. And then we also have, even with our destination resiliency plan, we want to be very inclusive of our community. So that outreach work has been done to residents in both English and Spanish.
Thank you very much.
I see a hand from Vice Mayor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you for the presentation. A lot of information to kind of absorb. The thing that I saw that was missing, and I wasn't able to find it on your website, is any information about your budget. You're basically asking for another 50% budget, moving from 9 million, adding another 5 million. Yet I don't see any kind of budget information on where, all these millions of dollars are spent. So I would be interested in a little bit more detail on that. And as the council will attest to, I like to see the budget. So I know, I see the mayor shaking his head. I just want to be sure that, we're spending money appropriately. So is there a place that I can get that information?
Yes, there absolutely is. And I will send you that link. Keo's chair of our finance and legal committee, so he certainly can talk about this, but being transparent with our budget is critically important to us as well. Through our annual report, there's a really good outlining of how our budget is spent, but those documents through the finance and legal committee are always available for anybody to see how every single penny is spent, every line item. And we also do a campaign return on investment study, so we know how much money is coming back into the community by the marketing, paid marketing we're doing. And it's quite high. It's at the low rate, it's about $166 for every dollar that we spend in tourism marketing comes back into the community through visitor spending. We have the tax rates and all of that for that piece of it. But I don't know if Kale, you want to add anything more from a committee?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely get you the information. It is a complex item, budgeting something that you don't have yet. So that's part of it. We tried to show the one slide where it showed what the marketing firm said it would cost to go into the different markets to actually affect those markets. As you can imagine, going into Los Angeles is extremely expensive to get advertising space. And so that, again, we took an hour-long presentation and tried to condense it down to 15 minutes. So it's a little bit difficult. But the reality is that the markets we want to target and the target audiences that we want, and I hear different council members in our misuse of the word of right traveler, that's really not what it is. It's really about the responsible traveler and going after those markets. Responsible travelers and sustainable travelers throughout the United States is becoming a booming market. And to get to them just costs more money. So while $5 million or $4.5 million, whatever it is, seems like a huge number, in the marketing world, it's really not. When you look at, some of these destinations that are spending $28 million just to be able to try to get people to their market, we're playing from behind from the beginning. And that's why the board really 2.5 years ago, whatever it was, pre-COVID, the whole world changed for the last 2.5 years, which is why we're finally coming to you now, said, excuse me, we need to get more dollars to be able to get the right people and the right thing. In the tourism industry, we've been hearing for years, great, you got tourists, but here's the problems with the tourists. And we want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that's why this has all come about. I hope that makes sense. Trying to be quick about it.
All right. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing those numbers. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Moore, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lemon. Thank you for that presentation on that. If I understood this correctly in reading through the packet, we are currently not paying anything right now because we don't have a hotel. Is that correct? Okay. And then secondly, I was just going to suggest if you really wanted to save some money in marketing, I would eliminate Dallas altogether.
They're actually a pretty good market, even if you don't like the Cowboys.
Thank you.
I'm seeing a lot of smiles here. You might have hit a good point, Councilmember Moore. All right. I got a few questions for you. First of all, I get the concerns from my colleagues. I was sitting here. I had a lot of question marks next to protect and preserve and right customers. And it does sound potentially a little wrong. I think I get what you're doing here. I get this may not be the intent. I recognize I would rather have, I don't know if there's a better word than responsible, but just not a lot more wealthy individuals who have been overserved, driving around the back roads, coming and going to, leaving wineries every weekend or during the summer at various times. That's problematic. And as you mentioned, people perhaps that might leave some of our outdoor areas in a less than pristine situation. So, what I think would be helpful to me, I would like to see, the one thing I see that does cut across the line where it may block diversity to some degree is there's a certain economic range that people have to attain to enter, to play in this sphere, to have the money to go on vacations and to vacation and stay in a relatively expensive place for many, such as Sonoma County. So I think, and I understand that's the area you have to focus on. So within that group, anything you can show us that shows that you market to a wide range of people and interests and further clarifies what that definition of a right customer is in a way that brings some more comfort to my colleagues and myself, I'd really like to see. I think we'd all like to see, and I think that would be very valuable for you. One other question. It mentions in the report that you bring back, for every dollar in marketing, you bring back roughly $14. That's a big number. Any specifics how that works? And then follow up with that. In the general sense, where does that go? What is the return to origination to cities versus distribution in the unincorporated county? The percentage that cities versus county put in do they see roughly equivalent percentages back?
Yeah, quite honestly, those who are in the BIA program and you're talking about those return on investment, they see a substantially higher return back than they put in. So we do inventories for cities like Santa Rosa and for Windsor and these places that have a certain number of hotels, and you see the return on that investment far exceed the actual dollars that are put into the program. So, but also just to remember that we need to market Sonoma County. So we have this sort of corporate brand that we need to remember that all ships will rise with the tide. If we can rise Sonoma County through this overarching marketing campaign, then all of those cities will benefit. So the 14-to-1 and this return on investment calculation is done by a company called Longwoods International, and they do the same type of ROI study for destinations around the country. They have a methodology that they use that calculates that, but it really does take a look at, for every dollar that, if, and I could go through the methodology, but they show you a Sonoma County ad, and they say, did this ad impact your decision to come to Sonoma County? So it's not just did you see advertising? So it's a really specific and very research, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember the word I'm looking for, but it's specific to research that does show that this is an attribute of another, and that visitor did come to Sonoma County, and then they calculate the amount of money that person spent in Sonoma County and in those particular places, and they get that return on investment calculation. So happy to share that piece of research with you as well, but there's very definitely a significant return on investment for the municipalities and a significant return on investment for the unincorporated area when you look at the amount of dollars that go into tourism marketing from each place.
Right. Yeah, I would like to look at with a sense of seeing what places get the most benefit from that too, because as always, when we do things in a regional level, anything larger than the cities, and typically that's a county effort in this region, sometimes it's larger, we always have to take a good look at what the return to origin is for us, if it really makes sense financially, because sometimes, frankly, we lose more on some things than we get back, even though there's an aggregate benefit to a larger group, perhaps, and that always has to be part of the consideration.
If I can just add to that, so being the hotel guy, I run Safari West now, but I've run hotels for 25 years in different destinations throughout the country and Caribbean and Hawaii. So Claudia talked about how if we raise all of Sonoma County, the reality is if we bring in, and I'm going to use a very hypothetical example, if you bring in a group to the Hyatt in Santa Rosa and a group to the Flamingo in Santa Rosa and a group to the Fairmont in Sonoma and whatever else hotels, that creates what's called compression in the marketplace. And what you see when that happens is all the hoteliers throughout the region, from Bodega Bay to Rohnert Park to Windsor to Cloverdale, all of a sudden see that compression happening and raise their rates because the demand has not changed for the marketplace. What's changed is that the inventory has changed. So it's a supply and demand thing. Once you start seeing compression because of what Sonoma County Tourism does, that's why she says everybody benefits. Because if you were a tourist and you said, hey, let's go to Santa Rosa, I saw that they had a brewery there. Well, if there's no hotels available in Santa Rosa, you're not going to say no to the vacation. You're going to figure out someplace else to stay. And then you start looking at our website and you start doing some research to figure out, okay, well, where can I stay that's close to someplace? Or different analogies I could use all over the place. If you're an outdoors person and you want to go to Bodega Bay or you want to do Redwoods or you want to do the Russian River, that creates compression throughout the marketplace. And that has been going on since I moved here in 2004. When one area does well, everybody does well because you have compression on the market and that demand has not changed. You still have the same amount of people that want to come in. It's just now that those other hotels get to say, hey, instead of charging, $225 for a Saturday night, I'm going to charge $275 and I'm still going to fill up. It's going to happen. Does that make sense? Does that help?
It does. I think we're getting fairly close to trickle down theory, and I don't want to go there because I think we know how that turned out, but I do take your point. Two last things. And this would be just some feedback, I think. I would imagine it would be fair to say that if your efforts are successful, one of the things metrics we would see from that was increasing flights to the Sonoma County Airport. Would that be fair to say?
The routes are a complicated situation. So the airlines definitely look at the number of their numbers game. They definitely look at how the capacity for filling their aircraft. And those routes will be reflected through the research that we provide and working with the folks at the airport to really give them a solid reason for coming into the destination. So yes, potentially, but it's a complicated situation when they look at how exactly they do add a new route, but we do work with the airport to make sure they have everything they need to be successful in that discussion.
Well, it would be helpful for you to know, I think, that certainly this city, as well as our colleagues in Sebastopol, both who are members of the BIA cities, got a surprise some years back. After the airport was widened, without much fanfare, suddenly we had jets coming in on a regular basis, and both our cities, large portions and neighborhoods, are in the flight path now of jets on a regular basis. On some days, with mind-numbing frequency from very early in the morning on Sunday till 11 o'clock or 11:30 at night. So I think if you bring this back or have any information that also shows any efforts you can make and any concrete results you might hope to get to perfect those flight paths. I know this is something that can be done, yet I've never heard any feedback despite asking for it from the head of operations at the airport years ago. It was promised that this would happen given time, but to my knowledge, it hasn't. So anything that would help improve the noise we get from jets coming in for those languid approaches and departures, it could perfect that where they're farther away from all of our neighborhoods, I think would be a big selling point. Because right now, when you say to me increasing flights in, I don't see the economic benefit. I'm thinking of the loss of peace and quiet for my neighbors and my colleagues in other cities as well. So just a tip.
Very interesting. We'll look into that.
Yeah, I think it would be, and it may well be for other places too. I think people look at the benefit of an airport, but I think anybody who lives near one, and there's probably a lot of us that are part of BIA cities, also have those concerns. So you should, perhaps if you can speak to that perspective, it would be helpful. And lastly, I would ask our city manager if we have the opportunity, since we do have one hotel in discussions, if you could talk with that potential hotelier and see if they have an opinion they'd like to share with us before this comes before us, whether they do or don't, whether it's positive or negative. I think that would be helpful maybe for us too. So that's the only thing I have. So ask one more time if any of my other colleagues have anything else that's come to mind they'd like to ask before I go to a little public comment. I'm not seeing any hands jump up right away. And I do see we have some attendees. So I'll ask if we can go to public comment and see if anybody has any input they'd like to share.
Thank you, Mayor Landman. Speaking to our attendees tonight, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use your raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Jenny Blaker, please go ahead.
Hello, yes, thank you. I didn't get to hear all of the discussion about the tourism. I did hear some of it. I just feel that it's such a two-edged sword, double-edged sword. On the one hand, wanting to attract people to Sonoma County for economic reasons. On the other hand, new people coming into the county for tourism means more traffic, more pressure on our roads and parking, more use of water, more pollution. If it's air travel, noise, pollution, the airport, if it's driving, all the troubles associated with that, the pressure on the land, on the parks. As I see it, the only way to do responsible tourism, if at all, would be to be somehow encouraging everybody to use the train and buses and maybe bicycle, but that's an issue too, depending on where they go and where how they use the roads. And things like, I did hear something about the environmental ecological kayak trips. Wonderful, but we also need those for the people that live here who don't know enough about how to keep our environment clean and how to support the ecology. I just find the whole idea of tourism and promoting tourism very problematic. I do understand, I do support the idea of a hotel in Cotati because we have people coming here anyway for Sonoma State, for musical events, and that kind of thing. But encouraging more people to come to the county for tourism is just, I'm concerned about it. And I also agree with some comments I heard about who are we reaching out to and who are we encouraging and why and what does that mean? I mean, we have enough issues not providing homes for people, let alone, you know, providing hotel rooms for visitors. Thank you.
Mayor Landman, that will end public comment.
Great, well, thank you. Well, again, I'm going to thank Claudia, Kale, and Kelly for taking time to be here. I know this is a lot of evenings for you guys to go out and do this sort of push throughout the county. So I do know we appreciate the effort and you've given us a lot to think about. And we look forward to hearing back with you for some more before this comes in front of us again, I think. So I thank you again and we'll look forward from hearing from you.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, so that concludes presentations for tonight and brings us to item 7, which is approval of the final agenda. This is an action item. So I'll ask City Manager Obid if we have any changes tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. No proposed changes.
Good. Now, this is obviously a ministerial thing, but since it is listed as an action item, I'll just ask our city clerk if we could check in and see if anybody would like to make public comment on that.
Thank you, Mayor Landman. If you'd like to make a public comment, please use your raise hand icon. Jenny Blaker, please go ahead.
Hello, I just had a question rather than a comment. I wondered if it would be possible to have an update on the wayfinding signage project. I think it's about a year since it went back to City Council for consideration of the content of the signs, the texts and the visuals and so on. And I'm wondering how far it's got and what's happening with it, and when the content of the signs will be coming back for at least City Council review. I just was looking on the City Council website, and by chance, I see that it says installation of the matte panels, decorative metal and lighting due to be complete August the 10th. That's tomorrow. I don't think that's the case, but I just wondered if you could give us an update of where it's got to, and in particular, whether the text and the visuals will be coming back for public comment again or to the City Council, and if you have any idea of a timeline on that. Thank you.
All right, and I'm going to clarify that probably wasn't an appropriate question for approval of the final agenda, but seeing as we're right next to citizen business, in a way it's perfect timing, because I'm sure after we conclude citizens business, we can ask the city manager to speak in that, so you don't have to wait till later for the city manager report. So with that, we've had public comment on the item 7. That takes us to item 8, which is citizens business and public comment for the consent calendar. And once again, I do have a paragraph I have to read. I'll ask everyone to bear with me. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item or items listed on the consent calendar, or any matter or matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council, may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. pursuant to City Council Policy 2021-01. Comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. And the mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. So with that, I will ask our city clerk if we have any citizens' business and/or consent comments tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Landman. If you'd like to make a public comment, please use your raise hand icon. Neil Hancock, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Council. I'd just like to ask if item 9C could have some discussion about cybersecurity best management practices in the city. Particularly, is there a best management practice manual for staff, or how is cyber hygiene safety culture encouraged? I'm sure there is some in the city, but the contract that is being discussed doesn't seem to identify it. And I think it would be a real benefit to actually be clear that the city of Cotati has good hygiene, cyber hygiene practices, if that's the case. I'm sure everybody knows that the cybersecurity situation is evolving, and there's some horrendous numbers for that. Cybercrime for 2018 was estimated to be at 600 billion annually, and is predicted to increase by 8 times to 5 trillion by 2024 with the current practices. This suggests that there's a growth industry in far-flung places that are looking to cyber harvest, if you like, from naive organizations. And I think we should just be clear that Cotati is not going to be in one of those naive organizations. And I think, with this industry that we're seeing, it's a horrible word to use, but there's going to be people who are using the internet from Brazil or Russia or China or Nigeria who are scouting around to try and find places. I mean, with the advent of the internet, the 2 seas, the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, have really disappeared as far as people getting at organizations. So we do know that Sebastopol had a $1.2 million phishing loss a few years ago, where there was some, anyway, I'm sure everybody's familiar with that. So I just would hope that Cotati is clear in its reports that for anybody looking at cyber issues in the city, that they're going to meet a well-trained staff, and that the city has its proverbial shields up for anybody who might think of trying any phishing attacks. So anyway, thank you.
Mayor Landman, that will end public comment.
All right, thank you. So we'll bring that back. Yeah, I'm going to ask the city manager if we can briefly, without pulling the item, briefly speak to some of that. Obviously, there's a comfort level between explaining prudent cybersecurity versus giving too much detail in a public forum about exactly what we do. And I will trust that since he's been deeply involved in that, he can thread that needle carefully for us and perhaps give Mr. Hancock a better idea and a little more sense of security about how this is working and intends to work.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So with respect to the cybersecurity question, we do spend quite a bit of time actually following cybersecurity best practices and evolving those practices through physical controls, procedures, training, and that runs the gamut in all areas of our organization, both from, in terms of email servers, file servers, how we do banking, and as you indicated, Mayor, I can't really get into the details. Otherwise, I'd be telling people how we protect our things. But we do spend quite a bit of time, both staff and KLH, who's our lead IT contractor, as well as IT experts we work with that are associated with CIRA and our cybersecurity insurance plan, who who also have minimum standards too, that all the organizations have to meet or exceed. So we use all those as benchmarks to make sure we meet or exceed all that in terms of what we do. I mean, no system is 100% perfect or foolproof. There's always a chance something happens, but I guess the best security I can give Mr. Hancock and everyone else who's listening to this is that we spend a considerable amount of time making sure that we are a hard target. And then going back to Ms. Blaker's comment earlier, so what's just to fast forward for part of the city manager report, what we're doing is we're starting the sign panel installation. Tomorrow is what the contractor is scheduled to start. The lighting's still a ways off because of supply chain stuff, just kind of insane to me. But anyway, the lighting's going to take a bit longer, but the panels are going up. And when I say panels, I'm talking informational panels, and that's different than the interpretive panel. So the interpretive panel is not going up. It's only the informational panels. So the interpretive panel is still kind of, it's still in review with the Great and Rancheria people at the moment. And we do expect to bring it back to council, hopefully in the not too distant future. So that's where that is.
All right, thank you, Mr. Obid. So bringing it back, then we're in item 9, which is our consent calendar. We have 4 items tonight, A through D. And I'll begin by asking if any council member wishes to pull an item, and I'll look to see if I see any hands up. Councilmember Sparks, I do see your hand up.
Yes, I would like to.
Councilmember Moore. Go ahead, Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I would like to pull item 9C, please.
All right, and Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Lemon. I had some questions regarding 9A.
All right, if they're brief ones, I think if you're not interested in pulling it, we can certainly ask the city manager. Or did you want to pull it specifically?
I do want to pull it because I think the questions are more detailed than just specific. Thank you.
Fair enough. Great. All right. So with that, we're down to 2 items, and we're on items B and items D on the consent calendar. Councilmember Harvey, I see a hand up. You're not going to get us down to 1 item, are you?
No, I'm not, but I am extremely concerned about going into, in a recorded meeting, too much detail about our security plan and what it is we do. This is a recorded meeting, and I think that there are people all over the world, as was pointed out, and I think putting too deep a level of discussion makes me extremely concerned.
Understood, and I would share those concerns. I think perhaps we might not have much more in the presentation than we've already heard, but we had a request to pull it, and we do need to honor that. And that will give the ability for any of us who want to ask a couple of questions, hopefully that stay within that appropriate area, to be able to do that. So I hear all of your concerns, and we'll do our best to deal with them in the best way that we can. So with that, what we have on the table is 2 items for consent, items B and items D. Can I have a motion for those?
Move to approve items B and D.
Councilmember Moore, I see your hand.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All right, if we could have a roll call vote on the consent calendar, please.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Mayor Landman.
Yes. All right, bear with me just a second. I'm remarking up this. So with that, let's see, we would be moving next to our direction on future agenda items. And I'll ask the council if anybody has any direction on future agenda items tonight.
Mayor Landman, did you want to take up the 2 items that were pulled from consent?
I intend to. I'm going to put them the first 2 things when we go to our regular calendar.
Thank you.
So I've seen nobody bring anything forward, so we'll move away then from direction on future items. So this then takes us to our regular, completes item 10, and takes us to item 11, which is our regular agenda. What we'll do is jump to our two items that were pulled from the consent calendar, and if we could have the staff presentation on those in order, Mr. Obid, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So item 9A is an award for installation of a new public restroom at Cotati Park. So just real brief background. The city did a Parks Capital Plan several years ago, which provided concept plans for all the parks. And then the intent after that concept plan was approved, reviewed by the community and approved, as we had capital funding, we would move from park to park and get into the detailed design and flesh out some of the details. So Cotati Park was the first park that the council had targeted for improvements per the capital plan. And we got into public workshops, to try to nail down some of the more precise needs that people wanted at the park. And one of the requests that came up during that those initial public reviews as we're about to start detailed design was the size of the park. And really it's one of the three big parks in Cotati besides Putnam and Cater, and people there felt like the restroom would be a very good amenity to have at a park that size. So the park was included in the plan for the design. And what is before you all tonight is, and you can see on packet page 43, it's a rendering of what this thing would look like. But basically it's a prefabricated public restroom. And the reason why you're seeing this separate from the improvement plans for the park is that the prefabricated structure takes a significant amount of time to both get the plans approved and then get the thing built and then shipped out to the site. So we are just about to put the site plans out to bid, and that's all the public, basically all the park improvements. And then by awarding this separately, we can get going on the restroom, get it through the design review, submittal phase, get it in construction, and hopefully have the timing work out so that the restroom is available once the park improvements are essentially done, and they can just set it down on the pad and then connect it to utilities. So we also did, just as way of background, we also did have, in one of the public meetings, we also looked at several different structure types and styles, and this was the general style that the people in the public meeting liked. We also had a similar conversation around the gazebo, which will be over part of the picnic area, but that's going to be in the improvement plans, which are, as I think I mentioned, probably going out to bid here in the next week or so. So that is it in a nutshell, unless there's more specific questions about the item.
Well, I think we had a promise of a few questions, so I'm going to go to the gentleman who pulled this first, actually, Councilmember Moore, and see if you'd like to ask your questions.
Thank you, Mayor Lemon, and thank you for indulging me on this. I looked at this, and this kind of stood out to me as I had some questions. If you're looking at the total overall structure, not inclusive of the pad that it's going to be on, if I understood this correctly, it's almost 300 square feet. Craig, are you on? Are you part of that, or?
Mr. Mayor, while they sort that out, I just had a really quick comment, if you'd allow me, please.
It's Mr. Unless if it's important, but this is.
I was just
Councilmember Moore has the floor.
I just wanted to request if the clerk could put the plans up so people watching the meeting would be able to see the plans. That's all.
Thank you. That's a good idea. If you can do that, Kevin, that would be great.
I'll see what I can do. One moment, please.
And Councilmember Moore, the structure is, about 300 square feet.
Okay. So if I'm looking at my math correctly, and it's an approximation, we're $800 a foot to build a bathroom. To me, it seems very, very excessive. And I thought, well, you know, if that's including shipping in, having it built out of state, I think Nevada is where they are, someplace like that. Couldn't we do a better deal having that built on site? Less than $800 a square foot? Because new construction typically is what? At the most, $400 a square foot? Something like that? And if I'm completely off base, let me know. And I'll you know, reconsider that. But it just, to me, seems awfully expensive for a bathroom. And I'm thrilled that they're putting one in there. I think that's great, part of the whole park improvement program. And I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into that. Or, but, you know, as Damien said, if we flush out the details on this, how do we justify that?
Well, we did bid it out against a site-built restroom, which was more expensive than this one. So this is less expensive. Public restrooms are kind of a specialty item because everything has to be baseball bat proof, basically. So it's a kind of a niche. It's not something you can just have someone throw up a structure and call it good as a public restroom, because they do take a lot of abuse. So when we were looking at it, there was a shorter list of contractors that build these kind of structures that kind of know what they're doing. And of the bids we got, this was the least expensive. So whether we could find, you know, whether we could hire an architect to build a custom restroom and then get it designed and built for something less, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I doubt it. I know that, you know, I doubt we could get it built for less. When you consider the architectural cost and everything else we'd have to spend to do a custom built restroom here.
Councilmember Moore, anything more you would like to ask at this point?
No, I'd like to see us really flush that out a little bit more. I just think this is a little expensive. I know the cost of building materials is coming back down right now from maybe when we initially put it out to bid.
The rest of our discussion, I'm going to ask if we can refrain from asking to flush out the details on this so the council can keep a straight face through our deliberations for the rest of the evening. If we can all agree to that, I'm going to move next to Councilmember Ford, but I see your hand up.
Thank you. I've been involved in the building of a hot tub for a community that, because of health regulations, had to be built as a public pool. And I can attest that building something to public standards is orders of magnitude more expensive than building to residential standards. And so this price, while I chafe at it, I'm going to support it. I actually raised my hand to just, as long as it's on the floor, to mention that I trust that the signs on the doors of the stalls will say something along the lines of all gender or all users or anything like that, and not use binary gender language. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to ask when I see a hand from Vice Mayor Harvey. Please go ahead.
Thank you for that, Ben. I know that, you know, traveling around and going into some restrooms that, as Damien pointed out, you know, they have to be at a higher level of indestructibleness. So I'm assuming that this one, although I can't tell from what we have, will have things like the stainless steel toilets and the stainless steel sinks and things of that nature that do cost more, but they are, as you point out, less destructible. Is that correct?
Yeah, everything is pretty robust in there. And of course, and I didn't mention this too, but there's also a lot of, accessibility standards and everything. I mean, everything has to be pretty thought out, right? It can't just be, because for the public use. So it has to be accessible to everyone and also as indestructible as possible, for sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I got to thank my colleague, Councilmember Moore, for bringing this up. This is the benefit of doing these things. It proves that as council members, despite some of these long packets, we all individually read them, and with our different backgrounds, sometimes somebody will catch something that sometimes the rest of us don't. And I think it was worth looking into. I'm personally satisfied. I understand with the specialized requirements of a public bathroom that the costs are going to be much higher, even with construction costs mercifully beginning to drop a little bit from their pandemic highs. And I'll point out, I have a little more comfort with it, although I may chafe a little like Councilmember Ford. I have a little more comfort because I'm looking at the cost of Santa Rosa's new public bathrooms. And I'm feeling like we may not look quite as fancy, but we're in a pretty good place. So with that, let's see. This item, bear with me. I can get back to the top of it. Asks us to adopt a resolution awarding a contract. So first I'm going to go to public comment on this, then I'll bring it back for further discussion and see if we're willing to move that resolution. Could we have public comment, please?
Thank you, Mayor Landman. Speaking to our attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Mayor Landman, that will end public comment.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'll bring it back to the council then and see if there's any more discussion. I'll be looking for hands to see if anybody has anything they'd like to add to this. And if not, I'll see if anybody would like to see if they can move a resolution to award this contract or not.
Mayor Lemon, I did have another question, if I may.
I'm sorry, and there you are. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not seeing references to stainless steel in the specifications on here. We've got the walls as block filler and epoxy paint, cedar mill, painted OSB. Can we get a clarification on that?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Thank you.
Okay, so on
Back at page 50.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to say 46 for this one. Packet page 46. There's restroom accessories. And grab bars, stainless steel, aluminum louvers, polished aluminum, toilets, stainless steel, lavatory, stainless steel, drinking water fountains are stainless steel, bottle fillers as well. Under plumbing, under the subset of plumbing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Good, and this is a good drill for staff. You never know when exciting things will happen, and you have to read that packet quickly. I'm glad you have younger eyes than your mayor does. And so I'll go to Vice Mayor Harvey. I see your hand up.
If we're done with discussion, I would be happy to make a motion. Okay.
All right.
I make a motion that we adopt a resolution awarding a contract for manufacturing and placement of new public restroom at Cotati Park and authorize the city manager to execute said award. And I will be very happy to have a restroom there. One of the things in walking our community, that's always been an area that not only was there not a restroom, there was not water. So I'm very happy that we're moving in this direction. As was pointed out, I attended a few of the sessions with the public in picking out the different equipment and stuff. So I think this will be a very welcome addition to our community.
All right. So we have a second. We have a motion from the Vice Mayor and a second, and this time I actually saw it from Councilmember Ford. So I'll ask if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
No.
Councilmember Sparks?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yes.
Mayor Landman?
Yes. So that carries on 4 ayes and 1 nay. So thank you for that. So we have one more item to take, and I believe that is item 9C, Data Watch Service Agreement.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So, well, I think everybody knows that KLH is our IT contractor, and the item before you all tonight is an extension of their existing contract. And I guess I'll leave it at that unless there's specific questions that Councilmember Sparks or others want to ask.
I think you've done the perfect segue. I see Councilmember Sparks' hands up and is ready to go. Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you, and I appreciated Vice Mayor Harvey's comments, and I'll try to keep myself to things that can be shared publicly. I just wondered about the term of the contract as security threats change and new threats emerge. It could be that an organization that's well suited to address security risks today might not be in 4 years from now. So I'm just wondering, what was the decision why was the 4-year term decided on, and what was the previous term for this? And is there an option to do a contract for 2 years instead? That's what I was curious about.
Yeah, so with KLH, we originally got into contract with them in 2015 originally. That was the original when we transitioned from a prior contractor. And then, so this particular extension is similar to the prior extension, to my knowledge. And I think that was the basis. The main thing was that it's, I think the main consideration is that it's multi-year, because if we do end up switching contractors, it's not something we want to do quickly, because there's a lot of transition that has to happen when you switch IT contractors. But with regard to your question about what if they start sucking as contractors, right? And we want to move on to somebody else. We have termination clauses, and we have regular meetings with them. And if they start underperforming or not performing, then we would start looking for a new contractor. But that transition would, unless it's truly awful, that transition would be a gradual transition away from them, just to make sure it's smooth.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Without going into too much detail, I had some concerns about this contractor, so that's why I was pulled this.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, to address the original sort of public comment that led perhaps to it being pulled, I'm curious whether KLH plays a role in staff training and sort of practices within the city. It's not directly addressed, at least I'm afraid I have not read all the fine print in the agreement, but I read the presentations about the agreement, and that's not particularly addressed. I'm wondering if they play a role in the city's practices around cybersecurity beyond, the phishing, trying to trick people into clicking bad links and things like that they do regularly.
They do. So at a high level, when new threats emerge, they inform us about it, and we talk about plans to try to address it, so that we're hopefully not one of the victims of something that might be happening globally. And we do. They do work with us to help us draft our various plans, like recovery plans, if there's a data breach or if there's a loss of information, those kind of contingency plans. So they work with us on that, as well as obviously all the backup solutions, other things that would help us recover in a disaster, and all types of disasters, not just even the cybersecurity, but earthquakes, those kind of things.
Can I follow up briefly, Mayor Lemon?
Oh, please do.
Just do they provide training materials for staff to understand best practices, phishing avoidance, and I don't even know the right terms. It's not my field.
I guess generally I would say that we, through some of our contracted programs, it does do training. There is training associated with it, kind of like how the council does, ethics training and that kind of thing. There's training modules like that are associated with some of these security programs.
Great, thanks.
All right, I'm going to look one more time to see if anybody else has any comment. I'll just say, yes, I remember taking those training modules, and I've certainly noticed I guess it's fair to say, since we've said it, not only are we trained, at least as employees here, to avoid phishing attacks and attempts, but we're also actually regularly tested. And usually they're easy. Once or twice I've had to look a little deeper than just checking the email, the real email address. So I think it's beneficial on that level, and they are working to make us more savvy, as we all need to be in this world. That's my perception. If there's no further questions, what I'd like to do is then open this up to public comment again, since we have pulled it, and see if anybody has any further comments or questions for us.
Thank you, Mayor Landman. Speaking to our attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Mayor Landman, that will end public comment.
All right, thank you. So that brings us back. So this again is looking for a motion to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement with KLH Consulting. So I'm looking for somebody to move adoption of this motion.
I would make a motion authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement with KLH Consulting Incorporated to maintain, monitor, and secure the city's network infrastructure from August 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2026.
And do I have a second from anybody, please?
I'll second that.
All right. So again, that's Vice Mayor Harvey moving, and Councilmember Ford with a second. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks?
No.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yes. Mayor
Landman?
Yes. So that carries on 4 ayes and 1 nay. So that then brings us to our regular agenda. And we're going to jump to item 11A. And this is a letter of support for CARE Courts. And I see it's written by our city manager. I'll ask for our staff presentation, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So the CARE Court legislation is, as it's sort of more commonly known, is otherwise known as SB 1338, which is currently making its way through the state legislature. And the CARE Act, if enacted, would authorize certain people to petition a court to create a voluntary or court-ordered care plan and implement services to be provided by county behavioral health agencies, which would provide behavioral health care, related medication, housing, and other services to adults who are currently experiencing a severe mental illness or have other severe mental issues that where the intent really is to try to stabilize people before they go, they either slide out of housing or they're already homeless, and to try to get them to a place where they can move back into housing and get them off the streets. And in the staff report on page 50 or 95, there's a list of the specified persons that can petition the court for a care plan. But I think in shorthand for us, it's typically like a family member, the police, the SAFE team members, those kind of organizations and many others that you can see in there. And the staff report are able to initiate the process to try to get somebody help. And the bill also specifies the process, and the process how these petitions are filed and reviewed, and includes a penalty of perjury requirement to make sure that the person petitioning the court is not just doing it frivolously, obviously. So that's a piece of the legislation as well. And there would be hearings for the person that is subject to the care plan. And these are typically confidential hearings, is how the legislation is written, so they would not be public, which is a little unusual for a court proceeding. The bill would authorize the care plan to be extended for up to once up to a year. And I will say that this legislation generally is a high priority of Governor Newsom. And it's really as an option to conservatorship and some of the other options that are available now, which are much more intrusive, and it's intended to create just an alternate path to get people help, hopefully early. And I also, just to wind this up, I will tell you that there's attached to this item are a couple things. One is a letter from Cal Cities. So Cal Cities supports this bill as amended, and their main concern is that it be phased in, and that there be sufficient funding for the program, as well as that cities are involved in the development of the care plans in the event that the cities are required to provide services and support as part of those plans. The state budget currently includes $65 million for the implementation of this, which Cal Cities, I think, believes that is not going to be enough for a statewide implementation of a program like this. I did also check with the County of Sonoma, since they run behavioral health agencies in this county, and I was obviously interested in what they had to say about the issue, since they would be the ones implementing it. And they had similar concerns to Cal Cities. They were looking for phasing of it so it doesn't just all turn on at once, as well as sufficient ongoing funding to make sure that the program is successful. They were also concerned about the ability for the courts to fine local governments up to $1,000 a day for not complying with court orders. And the concern, of course, I think in their letter, at least how I read it, was that they were concerned that the state may not sufficiently fund the program, and then the court turns around and fines them for not complying with it. So they asked the state to make the fines more about cases of persistent non-compliance, or basically, the counties that are thumbing their nose at the court, as opposed to just missing one of the milestones. And we did attach a letter to this, which encompasses some of those comments from both Cal Cities and the County of Sonoma as a starting point for discussion tonight. And then the last thing I'll just add here is that currently SB 1338 is getting close to through the legislature. It did go to the subcommittee on appropriations in the assembly, so it's already passed out of the state Senate, but it's in the assembly now, and it's at the appropriations committee. If it gets out of the appropriations committee, it goes to a full vote of the assembly, and then it would go to Governor Newsom's desk. So that's where it is at the moment. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, let's see if we have any questions. I see a hand right away from Vice Mayor Harvey. Please go ahead.
It's not a question per se, but this is a very, very timely. Last week at the North Bay Division meeting, which I was going to talk about later in our reports, but since this has come up, we had a presentation on Care Court, and the three speakers were Carolyn Cirincione from Cal Cities, Marjan Salon, and Antonio Isaias from the governor's office. And I can provide that presentation to you, but it was a really good step. It's not a silver bullet, but it gives another set of tools to help with mental illness and homelessness. The cities that asked questions, they were really good questions about it. So I think it's a good step, but a lot of folks did have the same concerns that were mentioned in the letter that's in our packet. And again, I'm happy to send this presentation. Just as a little bit of background on this, there was one of the council members from one of the cities that spoke about the fact that they had a adult daughter that has had issues for all of her adult life, and just their struggles of trying to do that and deal with that as a family. It's very difficult for families to deal with, and this gives them a tool to help get a plan and some help, because oftentimes what she was saying is when a person is ready, right now you have to volunteer to be able to be helped. A lot of times when the person is ready to do that, there aren't resources available to help that person. And so then they spiral again. So this is, definitely seems to be a step in the right direction. So that is what I know about this subject.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any questions from anybody else before I go to public comment? I'm not seeing any, so why don't we go to public comment while the council thinks about this?
Thank you, Mayor Landman. Speaking to our attendees tonight, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Mayor Landman, that will end public comment.
All right, well, then I'll bring this back to the council. So what we're being asked to do tonight is consider if we are willing to authorize the mayor to send a letter on behalf of the city supporting this proposed legislation. That's the recommendation, but goes further. The recommendation includes support of the amendments requested by Cal Cities as well as the County of Sonoma. So that's what we're looking at discussing here. Councilmember Ford.
Thank you, Mayor Landman. This is a tough issue for me. There are many in the disability rights community who argue against the care court system because it does not provide the resources to provide the supports that are necessary to make some of these care plans successful. So I'm going to vote in favor of sending the letter, but only because the legislation is clearly going to pass, and the only hope we have is to get some of these amendments in that Cal Cities and others are arguing for, to try to encourage a phase-in period and adequate support for developing these programs that the care courts would impose. Otherwise, we're all going to be left, in the same situation we are with homelessness. We don't have the resources to provide the housing, but we're mandated to offer housing to anybody in order to, support them. So I'll vote in support, but there's a really tricky issue with compelled treatment that is really a denial of civil rights to people, and it involves a really tough issue of somebody else deciding for another person that person is not capable of making their own decisions anymore. And that's a tough line to cross. So I'll vote in support, but I'm a little worried about that line. I think this is a well-designed program that if it has the adequate support, can hopefully make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let me see if I see a hand from Councilmember Moore. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lemon. Councilmember Ford, I would concur with you on that, especially looking at all of the variables that come into working with the homeless and the unhoused through the continuum of care and seeing some of the issues that come up there. I do have a concern regarding the individual liberties. Unfortunately, I have experienced people that I've known that have been put in care outside of their authorization way back when. And so some of those old stories still kind of resonate with me. But I understand that there is a need as long as it is funded adequately and the support services are there. So it's kind of a catch-22, and I would offer my neutral support on this.
All right, anybody else? I'll just say I hear the concerns of kind of some of the general thoughts I had about this. I do see it as something of value, but it's one of those places where there's no decision that's going to be perfect in all aspects, and I don't know if it ever can be. I do know, have experience, as we all do nowadays, in years of seeing people with mental illness issues. Unfortunately, in the last 30 years now in this state, out on the street often without family members or anybody else to protect and provide for them, who refuse service, and as a result, getting worse and worse shape, and eventually often pass on. And the goal to get to better outcomes in a situation like that strikes me as valuable. I will speak from personal experience, even with just friends and family members, being surprised to learn that when there was an issue with someone I knew with an incredibly strong break with reality, that I was deeply concerned about the person they lived with as that person was older. Researching it through the county, I found, because of the laudable and understandable concerns about personal freedom, unless that person hits certain key things, being clearly a danger to themselves, or saying they'd be a danger to others, there wasn't a thing that law enforcement could do. And in a situation like that, perhaps this gives us just a finer tool that can look at this with a human eye, hopefully, and on occasion, perhaps say, perhaps the best outcome is to do this. So I hear your concerns. I think they're valid ones, but like you, I think I would agree I'd like to support this tonight. So with that, if we have no further comments, I'll see if anybody, I think we just need general direction. So unless I'm not hearing any great dissension, I think I'm getting general okay with the caveats here to support this with the requests that Cal Cities and the county have made to make sure that we do have better resources to hopefully have a chance of actually doing this right, rather than just creating another program that requires things that we don't have the ability to deliver. So I'm seeing nodding heads. All right. Is that enough direction for you, Mr. Obid?
Yes, if there's a general consensus, then we're good.
I believe so, and I trust my colleagues. If there isn't, somebody speak up and let me know. So I feel comfortable with that. All right. So that does then conclude 11A. We're going to jump then to item 11B.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this is me as well. Just on the last item, it's kind of interesting. It seems like it's the year, it's kind of the year of mental health, because the 988 lines, which were previously suicide prevention lines, are being utilized for mental health crisis calls. And so those systems are going into place right now too, nationally, not just in California. So seems to be a lot more attention being paid to mental health and helping people get through that. All right, anyway, so switching gears to the item at hand. This is the side letters for the CEA, CPOA, CPMA, and the non-rep confidential and management employees compensation plan, as well as a corresponding revised salary schedule for fiscal 22-23. So just some quick background. We use small city comparable agencies to look at our total compensation here at the city, and we compare to small cities for many reasons, small similar cities for many reasons, because the duties of the job classes are similar and more similar in small cities. Budgets are similar, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to compare to a large agency that has different job duties and different resource levels. And we look at this every time we do a comp study. We look at this to make sure that we are trying to stay competitive, a competitive employer in this job market, by looking at the median, so the middle point of the small cities that we compare to. All right, so for all of the groups, one of the things that is going to be addressed here is the extraordinary inflation that we're dealing with this year, which is hasn't been seen since the .com bubble back in the early 2000s. So right now, the CPI for this area right now is over 5%, so it's pretty significant, especially in food and fuel. And as a result, each one of these bargaining units we talked about would have a 1% COLA, and then a life and also increased life insurance benefit from 100,000 to 150,000. This would all go into effect if the council adopts it this current payroll cycle. So that's essentially August 1st. So for the CEA specifically, the salary schedule adds the maintenance 3 position gets readjusted to be a foreman, which it was on the previous schedule, but it was just in the wrong position. And then there was some for some of the job classes in the CEA, there were some equity adjustments to the base salaries for those positions that were significantly below the small city median, but weren't addressed in the current contract. And also the accounting technician was aligned down for internal alignment and succession planning, and those are unfilled positions currently. The POA has, the side letter for the POA has a couple changes. One is an update to the timing of holiday pay. So no changes to the benefit itself, but the changes in timing. That's just because CalPERS requires that now. So it's just in alignment with CalPERS rules. And so that's specific to that side letter. And same with the CPOA, it's the same change for holiday pay timing. And then for the non-rep group, some equity changes to align with the small cities, small city medians. It's a 5-year outline of benefits or a compensation plan, and it would have 3.5% in the first year and 2.5% in the years after that. Amending the longevity of most of the members of this group to align with the other city groups. And there's a different alignment for department heads, which just shortens the time frame from 18 years is a typical longevity period. Department heads would be over a 10-year period. The post certificate is revised for the lieutenant. Uniform allowance for the superintendent changes from 250 to 300, and the chief and lieutenant uniform allowance goes from 800 to 1,000. There's also a revised holiday in lieu, life insurance, and constructive receipt. Constructive receipt is just for any cash outs. There's some IRS language that needed to be added to that. Recreation managerial position was included in the admin leave, the lower admin leave category. And that is about it. So I think I'll just leave it there. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, let's see if we have some questions before we go to public comment. I'll look to the council and see if anybody has anything they want to inquire about this right now. I'll wait a second. I'm not seeing any things pop up on the screen or the list. So while we're considering that, I think we'll jump to public comment because I see we do have some attendees tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Landman. Speaking to our attendees in the audience, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Mayor Landman, that will end public comment.
Thank you. I'll bring it back then to the council. One question does occur to me, Mr. Obid, which I probably could have asked before we went to public comment, but you know, I've become aware that we actually have lost some employees to other cities and to the county as well. And in some cases, not only is the base better, but there are also actually have been signing bonuses being offered now, significant signing bonuses to our employees.
Yeah, that is correct, particularly in some more competitive groups, police officers, dispatchers, and then some of the professional groups. They're just more competitive in those areas.
Well, I think this is always the fate of a small city, that you will train good employees, and once they get better, then they have increased marketplace value and sometimes can move up to better jobs. And I think we accept that. But at the same time, it's clear to me that this is a red hot market for employees. And if we don't stay at least within that small city median that we generally use, that's problematic. And I hate to waste public money by training good employees, getting them as part of our team here in the city, and then losing them to understandable economic pressures. So I think it's good for the public to know that, because I was frankly surprised to see that. It was not something I expected, but things happen. So any further discussions, comments, questions from the council? Let me see if I see any hands. I'm not seeing any. I know we've discussed this many times. So I will see then we're being asked to adopt the following numerous side letters and plans. I will ask if anybody would like to move the agenda item.
And
I see.
Oh, Mayor, I'm sorry to butt in here.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Obid.
Yeah, we do have department heads as part of the non-rep groups. There's a little statement. Yeah.
I had that printed out. I had it written down in here, and nevertheless, there always has to be something. Mr. Ford, I'll get you in a second, but I am required once again to read something, and this is important. I think it's a good thing. And I just wanted to share that the Brown Act requires that the City Council provide a verbal summary of recommendation for an action on a local agency executive's salary or compensation. A local agency executive includes non-represented department heads. Our non-represented plan discussed here in item 11B does cover the following department heads: the Director of Administrative Services, the Director of Community Development, the Director of Public Works and City Engineer, as well as the Police Chief. So for clarity and fulfillment of this Brown Act requirement, the changes to the department head compensation are separately identified here by the City Council prior to taking final action on the recommendation. And let me read these 7 items. Number 1, approving an equity adjustment to the base salaries by increasing STEPI hourly wage to $89.62 per hour, effective the current pay period. Number 2, approving a 3.5% cost of living adjustment, effective the current pay period. Number 3, approving an annual 2.5% COLA for the next succeeding 4 years. Number 4, amending the longevity pay structure to include an additional 1% for a total of 6% after 8 years, and an additional 3% for a total of 9% after 10 years. Number 5, increasing life insurance coverage to $150,000. Number 6, amending both the holiday in lieu and leave bank cash out policies. And finally, number 7, increasing police chief uniform allowance to $1,000 a year. So having read that, we can now commence deliberations on the entire staff recommendations. I'm going to go right to Council Member Ford.
Thank you, Mayor Lamb. I was going to make a motion. I just want to make sure Councilmember Moore didn't have a discussion.
No, thank you, Councilmember Ford. I was just going to either make a motion or second.
Right. Okay. I move that we adopt side letters for the CEA, CPOA, and CPMA. We adopt the amended non-represented confidential and management employees compensation plan and the corresponding revised fiscal year 22-23 salary schedule.
Councilmember Moore, your hand's still up there. I think you're the guy.
It is, and I would like to second that motion because I think that we have a tremendous staff and tremendous employees with the city. So I'd be honored to second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. All right, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yes.
Mayor Landman?
Yes. So thank you. That carries 5-0 and completes that agenda item. We now move to item 12, and it is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So just a quick reminder that the mobile COVID testing site that's at the St. Joseph's Park and Ride has been open Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and recently expanded to Thursdays also, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. They have added doctor consults and treatment for those who test positive and qualify, and appointments are available online. This is all on the city website, by the way. If you go to city news and the city manager reports, you can see links to all this stuff. Drought updates, so water usage totals from Sonoma Water are in and show that Cotati used 30% less water this past July compared to July of 2020. And it's a good indication. We do produce our own water here locally, but that's a good indication that our demand is significantly down. And that's a good thing given the low water year we've had and the pressure on our reservoirs. The Athena statue in the Plaza Park, I did mention this before, but just a new detail on that is that the damage that was done to the statue is going to be hopefully repaired soon. It's scheduled for removal from the park by the artist who created Athena on August 13th, and it's going to be repaired. I don't have a return date yet. I imagine that'll come once he has a chance to evaluate the damage and figure out what the repair is. Public Works projects. So there's been a bunch of projects that are just about to start. So we've had pre-construction meetings for the 2023 street preservation project, which is 5.4 miles of slurry and other street repair work. So that's pretty good. It's very good, actually. The Pocket Park and McGinnis Pathway project, the kickoff meeting happened as well. So expect to see some field work there soon. And then also the mosaic wall benches has also recently had its pre-construction meeting. Once we have construction schedules and other information on these projects, they will be posted on the current Public Works project webpage on the city website. So we just encourage everyone to go look there at projects because we have updates and statuses on projects, as well as the ability to subscribe to certain projects if there's a project that interests you. Specifically, you can get notified when there's changes to that. Wayfinding, we already talked a little bit about this earlier, but they do expect to begin installing informational signage on the wayfinding signs starting tomorrow. As mentioned earlier, we're still waiting on the solar lights, which are back ordered, and also the interpretive panel part of it is lagging in time. And just a real quick roundup of events coming up. We have actually one event that just passed, National Night Out. We celebrated our 6th National Night Out with the Cotati Police Department, and we served 400 dinners to the community. And that was followed by a movie in the park. It was Paw Patrol, the movie. And everyone had a really good time. I actually got some more good feedback from some just random people today who, not that it's a competition, but they were at the Rona Park one and they said it was awful and ours was great. So anyway.
Well, now you did it.
Anyway, so we had a much better event according to them. I'm not saying that's them, just passing along third-party comments. So we do have one more movie in the park scheduled for the summer, and this is going to be on Friday, September 23rd. And we're also going to have our first annual Cotati car show before the movie. And of course, the movie is going to be Cars that we show after the car show. So we're going to have food, popcorn, and coffee for sale. Although I think if you're under 18, you shouldn't be drinking coffee and watching a movie late at night. But we'll talk to the rec department about that. But anyway, you're all welcome to bring your own food as well to the park, and it should be a fun night. We are winding down Camp Cotati. This is our last week, but we have lots of stuff happening for the fall, including children's theater programs, kids' night out events, which counterintuitively is actually parents' night out events. So you drop your kids off and they all hang out together in the park and the parents go do something for a while, right? That's what kids' night out is. Cotati Candyland trick-or-treat event, that'll be on Halloween Day. Thanksgiving break camp and a lot more stuff. We also are happy that we're finally able to resume our Zumba Gold class. It's a free class actually offered through Santa Rosa JC. And Zumba Gold is for older people, right? It's an older Zumba for older people. And it had been canceled for quite a while through COVID for, obvious reasons, but they're back on now. So we're excited about that being back up. And there's more information about that class on the Santa Rosa JC Older Adults website. Farmers Market continues through September from 4:30 to 7:30 in the Plaza Park. Lots of great music, food, and other stuff to do there. And also, just to wrap it up, the Cotati Accordion Festival is back for 2022 and will be held on Friday, August 20th and Saturday, August 21st. And tickets and more information is available online at cotatifest.com. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, great. Let's see if we have any questions for the city manager tonight. Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. Just a quick question about the water use. I'm assuming that 30% reduction is from what we're getting from Sonoma Water. Is that right? Do you have any idea what the actual reduction is if we're taking into account the well water use as well?
I don't have July right now, but I think we're looking at June. It was 20%-ish, including municipal well use.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's great.
That is good news. Anybody else? I had a couple of things for you, Mr. Obid. First of all, I would mention we had discussed this, but I understand it with all the vagaries of the supply chain in the last few years that the panels for our displays along the Laguna were very delayed in getting to us. And we did suffer some fairly gnarly vandalism with markers. Somebody feeling very artistic. And I noticed that that did not clean up very well. And what's not clear to me is when our informational displays come, if they may cover that all. If they cover it, that's great. If not, I wonder if we could actually rehab those back to looking decent. I think once the display's back, they're going to be less likely to be targeted. And I would suggest in the future, if we're stuck leaving anything open anywhere, particularly in areas like that, but actually anywhere in town, we need to put something over it, whether it's a piece of plywood, whether it's a piece of plexiglass or even an old-fashioned burlap sack. But I think we need to do that because just leaving something like that open is an attractive nuisance for people that want to tag. I can understand how somebody just couldn't pass that up. And secondly, I love the idea of the car show. I don't know how you're doing about getting cars. Obviously, I'm sure you're aware that Carl Schulman would be a good person to talk to. But I'd recommend also, and you might remember Mr. Obid, Mr. Tomrose, Bill Tomrose Ranch, just outside Cotati, who's very close to Mr. Schulman. He has a regular show with a lot of really very fine cars there. That might be a good resource to talk to if you're trying to find people to show up and having any issues. So I just wanted to share that. All right. So let's get back to our agenda here. So that completes city manager's report. We're now to city council member reports, and I'll see if anybody has anything they would like to share tonight. Councilmember Harvey or Vice Mayor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. So I attended the Water Advisory Committee meeting. Damien reported on the water savings, so I won't go into that. But of note is how our reservoirs are doing. Lake Mendocino is actually in better condition than it was a year ago. And that has to do with the fact that PG&E has been letting out more water from Potter Valley because they had some issues. So that will start to decrease, but needless to say, more water was coming in than was going out. So Lake Mendocino was in pretty good shape. Lake Sonoma is really kind of at the same trend as we were last year. So it's holding its own, which is a good thing. And we are still able to meet our minimum street flow levels on both of those, which is a good thing. So those were the important things from that. I attended National Night Out. I thought it was a great crowd. Chief almost had to rescue me because as I was standing there, one of the children figured out how to turn the siren on, and it was behind me. Chief Parrish goes, "Oh no, not her heart." Anyways, but yeah, he figured that out all on his own. One of the children that was there, so that was pretty exciting. But it was a great turnout, and I thought that it was very well organized, and a lot of folks appeared to be having lots of fun. Lastly, as I said earlier, I attended the North Bay Division meeting, and in addition to CARES Court, we were. This was quite the day. So we were supposed to have a tour of COTS, Well, the day before, we were notified that they were having a COVID outbreak. So we decided that it was best to delay that tour. So we will be rescheduling that in September. And so then the night before the event, our executive leader, Nancy, she came down with COVID, so we were without her expertise. Although her staff did a great job of helping with that, because we had some officers that had to be sworn in. And lastly, Mayor, I think you'll remember this. So we were in the restaurant prior to going out where we were going to eat. And all of a sudden, black smoke started coming out of the vent, like that night when the black smoke came out from behind the dais. And apparently it was the similar situation where the belt was rubbing, but we had the added benefit of having the fire department come. So we moved everyone out. So the poor event, it really, they kept trying to challenge us, but the presentation on COTS, one of the ladies came and talked to us about it. And so I'm looking forward to a tour on that. But, you know, how they deal with each person, she was really extremely passionate. And it shows that they really do a lot to help each individual person where they're at with what they need, and helping move that forward. So looking forward to a tour of that. But that's all I have for tonight, unless there's any questions. Thank you, Mayor.
I do have a quick one for you, Vice Mayor. First of all, congratulations on what sounds to be a very exciting meeting. If you can't get press coverage for that, something's wrong with you. I wanted to ask you, though, more seriously, was there any successful challenge made to the nominating committee's recommendations?
There was not, and there were no nominations from the floor. It was accepted, so that was a non-issue. And
so that was the one part that wasn't exciting.
Yeah, and thank you so much for agreeing to serve on the nominating committee. Really appreciate that.
Happy to help. All right. Any further questions? Let's see, Councilmember Moore, either a question or he has something he'd like to share. Either way, I'm going to give the floor to Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Lamont. No, I just thought I'd give an update on a couple of the other committees. I just went to the Chamber of Commerce Board meeting as a liaison, and what they reported out was they had a very successful Cotati Music Festival and brought in a little over $7,000, and that's not counting what they may be receiving from an additional sponsor, so that's encouraging. The COC is moving fast and furiously. We've had multiple meetings and multiple meetings to come. We are hitting deadlines, and then we have what has appeared to come in is the notice of funding opportunities for the providers to submit information to the various resources such as HUD in the state of California, and how they're going to use that money. So some of those meetings are long and detailed, but fortunately it's getting much more efficient and effective in how they're looking at the total overall picture for the county and all the various cities. So that's encouraging. And then nothing else regarding CIRA or the former REMIP at this point. So thank you.
All right. And I'll look to my other colleagues. Any council reports? Not seeing any hands. Two things I'd share. First of all, related to the meeting you had or tried to have and challenges you had with COVID. We've shared similar ones at LAFCO. The meeting before our last one, so 2 meetings ago, not the last one, there was a decision to go to in-person meetings. I was not able to go to that one. And that actually, I was fine with that. This meeting, we weren't able to have a meeting because we had numerous members with COVID and then numerous members who were not interested in meeting in person. So we had forced to cancel the meeting, and staff will be looking into seeing what options they have, perhaps if they can get back to having virtual meetings, because they don't have the technology or personnel there to do mixed meetings. So I think it's a challenge everybody's facing right now. Lastly, a piece of slightly better news than that, might as well end on the more cheerful stuff. My colleagues in the public may remember SB 940, which the council sent a letter of support support for recently. This was the legislation that would remove a loophole that blocked local rent stabilization law, such as we have here in Cotati for mobile home residents. I just wanted to share that that did pass the Assembly on the 8th and went to the Senate. So hopefully it will move through there quickly and we might be able to see that be successful. So good news there. And with that, that would then conclude City Council member reports, and we'll jump next to public comment on non-action agenda items. I'm still seeing some attendees. We'll see if anybody has any questions for us.
Thank you, Mayor Landman. If you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Mayor Landman, that will end public comment.
All right, that brings us into item 15, which is information received after the agenda was posted. And I'll ask City Manager Obid if we have any tonight.
Nothing new that hasn't been already discussed, Mayor.
Well, that then brings us to item 16, adjournment. So without objection, we are adjourned at 8:12. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Forward to seeing you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.